Hello folks, today I'm going to show you one of the systems that I use to grow the plants out, and this system can also be a permanent home for the cephalotus. I usually use this system to grow out tip cuttings or any vegetative propagations that I have before I transplant the plant into its final home or future projects. So what you see here is a 24-ounce cup that you get at any store. And what I first do is you take the lid and mark where this raised section is so that you can see where you need to cut. The reason for marking is because you need to be able to cut this entire top off so that any of the flanges is gone. So once you're done, it should feel sharp, and I don't feel any of the flanges left over. And then the next thing is to cut slots. Okay, so what you have left is these little tabs with the sharp edges, because eventually the final product is you should be able to get a a 2.5 inch pot or 2 3/4 almost pot to fit nicely into here. Now if your container, now one of the trick is the pot that you're going to use needs to have a textured surface for the edge of the flange to grip onto. If you don't have this surface and you try to use a very slick container like this, it can eventually slip out. Okay, now one trick is, if you do have a slick container like this, go ahead and rough it up. Doesn't matter how you use it, I would just use a small file so that it looks like this, and that will give it the grip that it needs. And then the next thing is you need some capillary mats. So what I do is I use nylon cords, which is what you see here, that I've been using, for a very long time. And these are nylon cords. I believe they are number 96 on the cord gauge scale. So they measure 16 inches each. If you don't have these nylon cords, you can also use capillary mat. What I use is not a mat, it's more like a felt. This felt is used in industrial filtration. I'm not sure where you can get these now, but the company I used to get it from is no longer in business. But they measure about 5 millimeter thick. It's compressible. I believe it is a non-woven polyester fabric. It's very absorbent, and it's been working great for me all these years as a capillary mat. Now, if you're not able to find, if you Google capillary wick or capillary mat, you'll be able to find a lot of resources where you can get these material. And then the next thing is, on the bottom of the pot, the first thing you need to do is cut a wider hole. This is going to be for the wick. Okay, And then what I'll also do is I will use a soldering iron and punch a bunch of other holes on the bottom. So the next thing is you just insert all the wicks and the cords through these holes. I already have one pre-made. Now I did, on this example, I use a wider piece of capillary mat. This is about 1 inch wide. As you can see, it is pretty thick. And then on the inside, I cut it into 3 prongs. You can use it in 2 prongs. Whatever configuration you use, there's certain steps later that I will explain for what will work and what will not. So as you can see, I have all the holes drilled. Punch on this one. Yes, that's a little bigger hole. So this is what I learned is it's better to leave the tabs here uncut, because this will then help the soil from falling out as you're filling the pot. So I connected the cords. You can see there's 2 cords, and then inside the configuration, I just use a glue gun and just glued it to this. Okay. Now once you do this, before you put soil in here, you need to wet everything. So I am dunking it into some water just to saturate everything. And then the next thing is I already have my soil mix, which is my regular organic African violet mix plus peat moss and perlite. In this situation, I use a little bit more perlite than just a regular 1/3, 1/3 ratio. So what I do now is I'm gonna fill the pot, and I'm gonna tamp it down against the sides where I have the capillary mats. So this gives it really good contact with the capillary mat. The next thing is I'm going to water it in. So I'm totally saturating the soil until I see things start coming through the bottom. And if you look at the capillary mat, it is turning brown. So that means now you have really good capillary system working. Now, here's the critical thing that you may not be doing if you're using this system, is to ensure that you can scale this up like with my larger systems. Is once you have this done, just let it sit. Add more water to the reservoir, and just let it sit for a month, and see if the water goes down, and when you feel the soil, if it's still moist. If it is, then you know that the capillary system is working well. The reason you want to do that is because you may be sourcing your material from different vendors, and they may not be the same type of material that I'm using. So this ensures that whatever you're using, whatever the mix you're using, whatever the ratio of media that you're using is working. Just let it sit. If after a month and you feel that it's a little bit dry, then either add more peat moss to the media, or you may need to just start all over and add more wicking material to the pot. Now, there is a caveat. You can actually overdo with adding the wicks, because this, especially with this capillary felt, it is so efficient that if you put too many of these wicks in here, it can actually create a very boggy, waterlogged soil, which is what you are trying to avoid. Now, for me, I already know this system works because I have other systems that I've already done. For example, I already have a bubble giant tip propagation that I've done in this system, and this bubble giant was started December 2025. I have a tip cutting of Hummer giant. Okay, so here's the tip cutting. And what I normally always do is apply a little bit of rooting hormone. Put a nice label on it, so this way I will know when the plant was propagated. And then I'll put a dome over it to keep the humidity nice and high. And after the first month is rooted, from that point forward, I will punch one hole every 2 weeks until the entire container is perforated. And that's how I adjust the plant from 100% humidity down to my 60% ambient humidity. And if you're questioning how can you grow a plant like this in such a small pot and say that it is its permanent home, well, because the roots will penetrate the capillary mat and it will run into the reservoir through all the holes that we punched earlier into the pot. So for example, this here is a bubble giant. I have been growing this plant in this size container for over 5 years now. And it is in a jar. And you can see the size of the plant, the pot. And look at all the roots formation. Now, to further demonstrate why the system works, this is my Hummer giant mother plant. I know you were expecting like one massive plant, 12 inches across or something like that, but no, this is the mother plant. I have grown this plant using just one capillary mat, which you can't really see anymore because it looks like it has formed its own colony of microorganisms, and it is just one big capillary felt that I inserted into a stem-sized pot. And this plant has been growing in this situation, in this setup, for over 25 years now. You may notice the pictures are very small. They're not even the size of my thumb. But you know what? That's okay. Because this is a permanent home for the cephalotus, then you can use these plants as your mother plant. This is where you're going to take cuttings from. Now, with this plant, there are many growing points. If I were to level this plant at soil surface, I can end up with maybe 20 tip cuttings, and then I can propagate all 20 tip cuttings, and now I have 20 more plants in my collection. So this is what you can expect long term growing in a 2.5 inch pot using the Wick method. All of my cephalotus are grown under light, about 8 inches from the source. The wattage of the light, their LED grow lights, is about, they're no more than 40 watts. sometimes they're as low as 23 watts. And they're set on a timer with a 16-hour photo period year-round, indoors with ventilation, and the temperature indoors never exceeds 90 degrees, even if the outside temperature is over 100. And the reservoir, it is refilled once a week to keep the water aerated for the plant. And that ensures the roots are healthy and getting the oxygen that it needs. So if I've missed anything that you think I need to cover, please put it in the comments. Otherwise, thank you for watching and have a great day.